Joining me right now is Florida Senator, Senate Intel Committee Vice Chairman, and Senate Appropriations Committee and Foreign Relations Committee member Marco Rubio. Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much. And let me just say thank you for all of your efforts to warn the public about the risk and threats of China. You've written legislation in terms of banning investing in Chinese companies. Your reaction to what we've seen recently on this crackdown from the CCP and the potential for a contagion from now this Evergrande, the second largest property developer in the world?
Well, on Evergrande, I think it's a reminder that there's really we don't have any insight or any sort of understanding about the true numbers or the health of any of these companies in China. And so as we allow them into our market, by the way, we allow those Americans and American funds to invest in them in our markets, without any of the oversight or regulatory requirements that we would impose, for example, on an American company. We're putting potentially billions of dollars of American retirement funds and pension funds at risk. And so I don't know how we can continue to do that. And I hope this administration will be strong about it. We were making a lot of progress under the Trump administration in that regard. And then we've kind of lost some steam here with this new administration. On the first point of the crackdown, I think it's pretty straightforward. And that is Xi Jinping is sending a very clear message. He doesn't care if you're a billionaire or one of the largest corporations in the world, or you're a celebrity because they've cracked down on celebrities, or you're a company that's a big giant on social media. No one is bigger than the Communist Party of China. And I think he's putting everyone in their place and reminding them, you may get rich and you may get famous, but you're still under our control. And I think you're going to continue to see more of this in the years and months to come.
And they say it with sort of an iron fist. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, the most popular, famous entertainer or actress in China was just disappeared. And her entire footprint on social media was disappeared. She is the Reese Witherspoon of China. Of course, this is just several months after Jack Ma disappeared because he made the mistake of criticizing the financial services regulatory backdrop. A lot of dangers in investing in Chinese companies. But it seems, Senator, that U.S. investors, some of them, do not understand the national security risk. We spoke with former Senior Director of International Economic Affairs at the Reagan National Security Council, Roger Robinson Jr., earlier this week. Here's what he said. Watch.
First, on variable interest entities, I think it's the most scandalously deceptive financial structure that I've seen in my over 40 years in the business, so to speak, of looking at global finance. I mean, as you said, they own shares of contracts of shell corporations. 95% of Chinese listed companies are using this deceptive vehicle. The American people have no idea that, for the most part, they don't own one single share in one Chinese company. They have no real minority shareholder rights. They have no legal recourse. These things can be swept away on a whim of the CCP.
Yeah. And Senator, it's not just an investing story, and yet you've got Larry Fink from BlackRock telling his investors they need to take their allocation to Chinese stocks up by 3 times. 3 times. And then you had Ray Dalio at the Greenwich Investment Forum this week saying that this is all manageable. Yes, investors will be stung. That's how it works, Senator. And by the way, all of this is not just an investing story. This is national security issues. And yet Joe Biden did not even address China in his speech at the United Nations General Assembly this week, Senator.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in terms of confronting these kinds of issues. It's been a priority for this administration. And the first point is that the one you were talking about is, look, there's a lot of people out there that have made a lot of money investing other people's money in China. There are a lot of people and a lot of companies that have made a lot of money gaining a small percentage of this very large market. And they want that to continue. For a lot of these people, it's not what's going to happen 10 years from now. They won't be here 10 years from now. They want to know how much money can they make for their fund, for their investors, for their company over the next 2 to 3 years. And by the time this crashes or whatever terrible thing happens, they'll be long gone. It's not, in many cases, their money that they're risking. But it's a risk for the country. It's a risk for the country because what we're dealing with here is not just a market failure. Okay, one thing is, as I don't exactly recall now who you said that said this is the way things happen with investors. It's true, there are market failures and you win or you lose. This is directed by government. This is if the government decides that we want to collapse an industry, a company, an American investment in China, they can do it overnight. It would be a government action. It would be something that they would take on, in many cases, deliberately as a geopolitical chess move. And this continues because we have a ruling class in American finance that is deeply invested in short-term profits from China and care nothing about its long-term implications on the country or our national security.
So why then is Joe Biden loosening sanctions on Huawei? Huawei now has a new lobbyist, Tony Podesta. Yeah, John Podesta's brother. Some of your colleagues are raising concerns over the use of Huawei's cloud services by the United States and other governments, saying that they're worried about security and privacy issues. These are national security issues.
Absolutely. And I would tell you a couple things. I think number one, the Biden administration is just generally disorganized and chaotic right now. I think the last week stands as a testament to incompetence and the fact that they're being overwhelmed by circumstances. Many of it is, their woke rhetoric is crashing into real world situations and is not working out for them. But part of it, I think, is what you've pointed to, and that is let's not kid ourselves here. When you look at Wall Street and big all of those industries and financial industries, they are enormous and big supporters of the Democratic Party and of Joe Biden. They generally align with them on virtually everything except maybe capital gains tax and carried interest in a couple of things, but in terms of social issues and the like, most certainly. And they're having an influence on this administration, and they're telling them to back off. And part of the problem we're having here is this insane allergy to anything Trump and the Biden administration. Basically, if Trump did it, it doesn't matter. It was a good idea. If Trump did it, they're going to do the opposite. And I think the same is playing out a little bit here in China. If Trump was tough on China in one way, they want to be loose with China in another way. They want to do the opposite of everything Trump does. And you know what that's gotten them? A border crisis. It's gotten them a fiasco in Afghanistan. It's put them in a very difficult position and the country in a very bad spot.
Yeah, or it's even worse than that, and beyond just the Trump derangement syndrome, that maybe they're making money on China. Hunter Biden is selling his art, and the art dealers. There's no doubt about that, right? So what? No pushback. It leads me to your op-ed. You're announcing new legislation pushing back on woke corporations. In an op-ed posted on Fox Business this morning, you say no more legal tricks that shield these corporate executives from accountability. If they really believe that being woke is good for business, they should have to say so and prove it. Tell me about this proposal, because yes, there are many in the corporate sector making money on China. They want to sell their widgets to 1.4 billion people. But what I'm even more concerned about are the people in Congress making money on China and the Biden administration making money on China. Is that why we never see any policy with any teeth against China and this woke Marxist thread moving through our country?
And I would bifurcate those two issues, although they're interrelated. In the case of China, listen, the Chinese have learned how to play our own game, right? They go to these investors, they go to people that are making money, and they turn them basically into de facto lobbyists on their behalf. In some cases, they threaten them. In other cases, it's through incentive about how much more money they could make if they could get the administration to make certain decisions, and that extends to Congress. In the case of the woke corporations, look, if a company is going to boycott a state, right? If a company is going to pull a product off the market because it has an American flag on it and that might offend some people, if a company is going to make these decisions under pressure from either the woke culture or some employee uprising internally that's pushing them in this direction, then they should have to justify to their large shareholders why they've done it and why that's in the best interest of the company. And if they're sued on those grounds, they should have a higher standard of proof, a higher burden to prove that this is a decision that we have made as a corporation because it's in the best interest of our business model. We're actually acting in the interest of our shareholders, not just kowtowing to pressure from China or pressure from the woke and cancel culture in America.
And by the way, an Army officer is resigning over the Biden vaccine mandate. He calls it a Marxist takeover of the military. Army Lieutenant Colonel's resignation letter is gaining attention. He confirmed to Fox News that his resignation is in order. He says he's not going to wait the final 2 years before he gets to his pension because he doesn't like the Marxist takeover of the military right now.
Yeah, one part of it is this. Look, I've always told people, and my personal view of it is I'm vaccinated, and I encourage people to get vaccinated, but I don't believe government should be forcing people to do this. There's something un-American about saying we're going to use the power of government to force you to do something, or we're going to kick you out of your job, we're going to leave you unemployed, you won't even be able to go into certain places. Now they're considering banning air travel. And yesterday, Joe Biden, I believe, said that he thinks those in the military who refuse to be vaccinated should be dishonorably discharged. So you think about the levels. You know, Marxism, people think about it, Marxism as an economic model. It has an economic component. Marxism has never been solely about economics. It has been about power and about control, about having the power to force people to do what you want them to do or pay a very high price. That's what Marxism is about.
Yeah.
That's what it's been for, 100-some years, and that's what this neo-Marxism is about.
It's very, very concerning, and you would think that our military is focused on readiness, especially with the crises around the world. Instead, they're being taught critical race theory and Marxism. I want to ask you before you go about the crisis at the southern border. DHS has confirmed that Haitian migrants have flooded into Del Rio in recent weeks and that they are being released into the country. They're not saying how many are released. Secretary Mayorkas was unwilling to release the data during the 2 days of congressional testimony, Senator, but we know they're being released into the country. We don't know how many, and we don't know where they're going.
Yeah.
Implications.
And let me preface this by saying that I have a tremendous amount of affection and respect for the Haitian American community. These are hardworking people, contributed a tremendous amount. And I feel terrible about what's happening in Haiti and has happened for 50, 60 years. Mass migrations are always bad because they're caused by some sort of tragedy, but they also are bad because they lead to tragedy. And that's what we're seeing now. People are coming for one simple reason. First of all, many of these people haven't been to Haiti in 2 or 3 years, or any of the other countries are coming from, Cuba, et cetera. They've been living in third countries, and they see now is the opportunity to come because Joe Biden sent a very clear message in his campaign and as president, I am not going to enforce our immigration laws. That's the message that he sent. What he sent is going to be easier to get in, and that's why they're coming, and it's terrible.
And yet Cubans can't come in. He said, let me be clear, if you take to the sea from Cuba, you will not come to the United States, Senator. You're Cuban, right?
My parents came from Cuba, and like I said, they go, look, I'm against mass migration no matter where it comes from because it's bad for our country. I feel terrible for these people, but Joe Biden is luring them here, and it's wrong.